people aren't necessarily sure when detention is or isn't required, so there's some clarity that we can add there. Maintain culvert pipes and driveways as private facilities within the right-of-way. And the county serving the right to clear blockages and make repairs and potentially place liens on property for the cost recovery of those if there's infrastructure that we have to do or maintain that's in the right-of-way, but it's privately owned. Number 12, we talk about study and improve the regulations of floodplains and other drainage infrastructure to address adverse impacts caused by new development. So pursue funding for a comprehensive floodplain studies in rural areas to manage drainage and flooding concern. I have a slide later that talks a little bit about a drainage district. That's something we can take a look at here because I just want to highlight that as something that we talked about at our last meeting. Number 13, consolidate and clarify the county participation in infrastructure construction and oversizing. We sort of touched on this already, but we wanted to establish clear and non-contradictory language that describes the county's participation in upgrading and oversizing roads during development. So when a development comes in, we can require that the road be oversized, but what we would need to do as a county is we need to participate in the cost of that, because in planning it's called proportionality, so everything has to be roughly proportional to the impact of development. So let's say if there was a road, and just for easy numbers, if we wanted a road that was going to accommodate 10,000 cars a day, and that development was only doing 2,500 cars a day, well, they're not really responsible for that other 7,500 cars. So there's a proportional share that the county would kick in if the county wanted that road oversized.
Yeah, I think one of the major things to be addressed in this, from my perspective, would be is acquisition of right-of-way. Mm-hmm. Because, man, when I take a look at what we're paying on a per acre basis for right-of-way for county roads, man, I wish I could sell all my property at that value per acre. Yeah. And I understand how the process works. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, and what you have to do to get there, short of condemnation and going through all that process. But on the oversized roads and the oversized participation, man, I think that the right-of-way, from my perspective, is the most important ingredient there. I don't know about the structure itself, but I think right-of-way is huge, because the cost, if the development continues to demand what it demands, then the cost of the right-of-way is just going to go up. And I'd love to see a graph of right-of-way acquisition costs versus property values in Brazos County, because I'm promising you that right-of-way acquisition costs in Brazos County are going up at a rate that's probably 10x what property values are, if not 5x. So I think that's my major concern there, is that right-of-way for thoroughfare, and coordinating that with your thoroughfare plan is a huge part of that.
Yeah. And then that circles back to sort of the county thoroughfare plan, or the MPO thoroughfare plan as well. Mm-hmm. Once again, with the state sort of having us up in the air about our ETJs, because if we're thinking about College Station and Bryan, probably worthwhile implementing their thoroughfare plan and which the MPO plan should reflect. But want to be sure that we're getting that, as you mentioned, the right-of-way in the right place when those develop. Going to 14. Distinguish between county-maintained improvements and HOA-maintained improvements. Want to clarify maintenance responsibilities that fall on the county and those that are private or other public entity should maintain to prevent the county from taking over maintenance of facilities primarily benefit private property. So really just roadways. So if there's any type of Of course, like an amenity center, that's all going to be dedicated to a HOA, and you'll see that property on the plat will probably be dedicated. They'll have a lot number, but probably start with an X or something like that, so you can see all the HOA maintained or HOA properties that they have. But we just want to be sure that it's clear, because sometimes a resident will not understand whether it's the county's responsibility or whether it's the HOA's responsibility. There can always be
sometimes. Did I hear you say sometimes?
So, but yeah, so we want to always be able to be clear about this isn't the county's responsibility, so we can show you on a plat. And so once people see that, yes, here's a map, shows this as HOA, it's a little bit, maybe it doesn't stop them from asking, but because of course, you'll probably get the comment that, well, I'm a county resident, so, but, which is true and valuable, but once again, there's clear things that the county is supposed to maintain versus what should be private. Number 15, and then we'll go into we have 3 more after this, just sort of the highlighted changes. Establish a preferred form of fiscal security for construction. So require preliminary acceptance of construction before final plat approval and full acceptance before recording. We want those, of course, before the recording of the plat. We want everything to be in place. Now, state law did change a few years ago with House Bill 3167, which just basically allows anyone to come with basically a final plat, a bond, to say, here you go, I want to get my plat approved. So in the subdivision regulations update, we need to have that option there, but most people still prefer to come with a preliminary plat and go through that process. Preliminary plat, building the infrastructure, coming in, filing the final plat. So having those options in there. But there's a few things that just the state has changed. We just need to make sure that they're in there as options.
Where is that in the House Bill 3167? Where is that in law? What chapter is that? Do you know from the local government code?
Yeah, it's 232.
232.
Mm-hmm. And it basically, that is the one that basically took the requirement out that you couldn't require someone to do a preliminary plat or development plans as part of getting that approval of the plat, that they could just come with basically the plat and a bond. Now, what we would review in those cases where there could be discrepancies with whether this bond amount is correct. And that's when the county engineer would be taking a look to say, like, okay, here I see this amount of roads and this amount of infrastructure in here, and this is my estimate versus compared to the developer's engineer's estimate. Just got to make sure that those are in agreement. So, but that's in 232 as well. Okay, so some quick changes from last time that we just
take
want.
a 10-minute break.
Oh yeah.
That sounds good. Yay. Annie, I just went to the bathroom. I did bring some water, thank goodness. Looks like let's get this show on the road.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Judge. All right. So we're close to the end of the presentation here, so just kind of a few more items. Just want to talk about there's a few things at our last workshop we discussed, and so how that fit into those 15 items that we just went over. So we talked about adding public improvement districts. We talked about under that Action 10, revise how county distinguishes between rural and urban type developments. So we had, in addition to concrete streets must be supported by an agreement or separate entities such as MUD, Municipal Management District, Public Improvement District, or other development agreements. So once again, when we're looking down into, getting into those more urban, suburban type developments, who's really responsible for those streets? Are those going to be maintained by a MUD? Are those going to be private streets that are, if we make it maintained by the homeowners association, why that could be an option. Leaving street repair and stuff like that to the HOA is probably not the best idea. So there's different ways that we can try to get a MUD or some other type of funding mechanism so the county's not responsible for those type of developments. And there's different also elements that we can have if something starts out as a private road. We can have policies in the subdivision regulations that say, like, if you're going to petition the county to, take over a private road or something like that, our policy is you make a good faith effort to annex into a city if you're in an ETJ. So try and find some way to address that infrastructure need and matching it up to a city rather than to the county. Once again, we don't have the taxing as the same as and the resources as a city has. And then lastly, the districts can recoup the cost of the infrastructure and maintenance through tax assessments levied within the district's boundaries. So really, development paying for itself.
So what you're saying is with that first part is agreements with a municipality where it is a let's just say thoroughfare that goes across the county, across the city limits line. And are there instances where cities participate in public improvement districts within the county as well as the county participating?
Well, when we get into the MUD conversation, the municipal utility district, it will be its own separate taxing entity to be responsible. When we get into some municipal management districts, those can have some opportunities to help provide funding for different elements, but the city itself proper is often limited to only being able to spend in the city limits. We can get into interlocal agreements because sometimes there's agreements between maintenance of a road between a city and a county that may be outside of the city limits, different elements like that. So there's some opportunities to take a look at, but sort of going back to the concept is really just trying to find someone other than the county to be able to maintain that roadway infrastructure.
Right, to get it off the county's back. But I was just curious if there was, one of the things that I think you're going to find in conversations I've had with folks in College Station is their concern is what happens beyond the city limits. And in the case of Precinct 1, College Station's not going to expand in territory. It's going to have density improvements. It's going to go vertical. A whole lot of what they're doing with their zoning is about density of development and density of population, because they're not going to expand in area because of the CCNs that I talked about earlier. But their concern is if once you go beyond the city limits, what does that thoroughfare, let's say, particularly look like? And I didn't know if there were any examples of where you have agreements where in a public improvement district you have a city as well as a county participate in some way.
I haven't seen the cities participate outside of the city limits like that. And the funding, when we look at what type of road is constructed, the right-of-way, the engineering standards for the road, if it's in the ETJ, yes, we can go with the city standards, even though ultimately they're not the ones responsible for the maintenance.
Yeah, well, we did that when we did the development on Rock Prairie West.
Okay.
There was a piece that went through Rock Prairie West that was county section. And we did it subsurface drainage, curb and gutter, concrete. But since the county has no ability to be able to participate or be able to maintain concrete structures and subsurface drainage, that in the development agreement we had on that piece, even though it was in the county and will never probably be in the city. But that little piece right there was done to a city standard, and the part of the agreement was for them to take over they got the maintenance requirement for that in perpetuity. Comparable thing would be good in Precinct 1 on Greens Prairie on the county section that goes through there, because you go city, county, city. But I was just curious if those types of things, I'm just saying is if the cities lose ETJ rights, there may be a need for participation in infrastructure development. I'm talking specifically thoroughfare infrastructure. And I was just curious if y'all had any examples, other places where they're dealing with that.
I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but we can talk and see if we can get you some others.
Thanks.
We talked about adding drainage districts. This was back on item 12. Study and improve the regulation of floodplains and other drainage infrastructures to address adverse impacts caused by new development. And so what we added was consider participating in creating a drainage district per Chapter 56 of the Texas Water Code. Drainage districts are more along the coast. You'll see they're more in the Houston area, but those drainage districts would basically be responsible for the drainage improvements inside their boundaries. So that's something that we could say you could take a look at and investigate that. They can, once again, take a look at maintaining the drainage infrastructure that is needed in their boundaries. And of course, improvements are funded through bonds and those type of taxing ability. Lastly, we have just clarification on the oversized participation. This was on 13, consolidate and clarify county participation in infrastructure construction and oversizing. So we added the subreg should establish clear language that describes the expectation of county participation in infrastructure oversizing due to private development. Specific enough to assign responsibilities to developer to construct its share of the improvement, and flexible enough not to bind the county to the exact cost share. So, going once again to that rough proportionality, just what are you responsible for? County participation to oversize that facility. And so that is our key elements. So sort of wrap up and next steps. So where do we go from here? We'll make any tweaks or adjustments that we need to the document, and then go ahead and send you just the final copy. And like I said, this document's really the game plan for moving forward. We've identified the issues. We have a clear roadmap, what we need to get done, and it's really a great jumping off point where a lot of the heavy lifting has been done to say, like, okay, now we know what we need to do to update our regulations. And so looking ahead, having some ideas about, yes, we need updated subdivision regulations, probably those engineering standards that address the drainage and the transportation as well. Develop an application handbook, the thing with the applications, the checklists, the flow charts, that easy thing to communicate to a developer or an applicant what's required, going back to addressing those comments. And that also leads into looking at updating your fee schedule as well. What are the fees for the different types of applications that are coming through, the inspection fees, just the regular plat application fees, the inspection fees, all those type of elements. So there's different things to look at, but as we sort of touched on early in the conversation, it's probably a very important project as we've discussed before. Who knows what the state legislature will do with our ETJs in the future. Ideally, it would be great if we had a new set of subdivision regulations and engineering standards to if all of a sudden the veil is taken off and there's no thing as an ETJ in the county, then all these acres that are now going to come to the court to get approved, or state does allow for some staff approvals as well. What does that look like? And then to your point, once that's done and having that in place, going back and coordinating with the cities as well for the interlocals to make sure everything's covered in those important documents. Because who knows, maybe the ETJs stay, and how far the pendulum swings, I mean, we don't know till they meet and they let us know. So, but like I said, we're really have dived into the issues, and now you're at a good point to really knock out the subdivision regulations and hopefully have those in place soon. So.
Daniel, I appreciate all that you and your team have done, and I feel like, a large part we've got to where we are because of input from so many stakeholders. Mm-hmm. One thing I would like to see is another day of meeting with those stakeholders, perhaps after this revise, finalize, and submit the diagnostic report is done. Because the stakeholders, today is a school holiday, so a lot of the stakeholders couldn't come. The ones that are here are probably in big trouble with their family. I apologize to them. But they didn't get, it's a workshop, so they don't really get to give input today. But I would certainly not want us to move beyond that next step. Let's go forward with the next step, but then let's have another day of dialogue, if we could, with our folks that you did meet with, the stakeholders you did meet with. If we could coordinate with our team here and just let them be able to walk with you through this. I agree that the urgency's there, that we shouldn't wait on the Senate bill, but that because of the Senate bill, we should be ready. And I know what I'm asking for is a big speed bump as far as that process goes, but I do think it'll make us have a better end product. So just 105, that's something I would really like to see done.
I agree.
Yeah, I think getting it right is a lot more important than just getting it done.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
because of the work that has been put into it, I would sure hate for us to get it done and then have to edit it or have something that is subpar product. I'd love to have us. But the work you've done and where we're at, I'm very grateful for. And if you'll just not get back in the car driving home going, I hate that guy. But
yeah. And would we like that to be a workshop like this with the council, or sort of like what we did
What you
with our
did
stakeholder
before.
meetings?
Yeah,
and where we just
stakeholder
sat
meeting,
down?
yes.
Okay.
Where they can one-on-one and where they can give feedback. But then that might add another ripple in that we're going to look at that feedback, and and that might even slow us down a little more. But
Yeah. Question, our stakeholders, did they receive a copy of this?
That's on the website now,
Okay,
on the county website.
county website.
Yeah.
okay, good. So that they have a chance to look at it before another stakeholder meeting.
And we can get with staff to coordinate that, and then of course coordinate with you as well when you think it's best to have that meeting.
Yeah, we may, without y'all, after you've had that stakeholder input session, we may need to have something that's more local where we invite the stakeholders to come in a meeting and they can discuss with us. In a workshop, let them give feedback, because I really think that's necessary. So. All right.
All right, and that is it for the presentation. We appreciate it, and we'll
Thank y'all.
coordinate
Thank y'all
with
very
staff.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The workshop's adjourned.